tuning in to Women in Color. My name is Cheryl, and I'm pretty excited about our first show. I'm glad that you decided to watch. So as you know, a lot has been happening in our world around the issues of racism and social injustice. And in the past few weeks, I've had some very interesting conversations with people, both on social media and in person. It's been very interesting to listen to different viewpoints. And what I've come away with is the reality that more space is needed for more direct conversations, more platforms to talk about racism, social injustice, community and cultural lines, more space to just hear those hidden stories and the impacts of racism, particularly on Black women and women of color. We are living in our color today, and so we launched Women in Color as a space to do just that. But first, listen to this. So on Juneteenth 2020, I had an interaction with the police. I was driving my car in my neighborhood, and I was stopped. And there was no physical altercation between myself and the police, but the power displayed by this very tiny white woman when she came up to my window was a little unsettling. As a Black woman, especially in this current climate, the concern around police brutality really hangs over my head a lot. And when she told me that she had a body camera and it was recording in that moment, it all became very, very real for me. I actually felt intimidated and uncomfortable. And when I went home, I sat down and I thought about George Floyd and Rayshard Brooks and Breonna Taylor and Elijah McClain and so many others. And I just started to cry. And all that anger and all that frustration of why and that this has to change also became very real for me. Watching Emmanuel Acho's videos of uncomfortable conversations with a Black man, I knew I wanted to add my own voice. I knew it was time to add my own voice. And as a Black woman, I have experienced these issues. And I've had these conversations for a long time. But now feels like the right time to draw them out even more. Now feels like the right time for us to have really honest and direct conversation about racism, about social injustices, and about how it all needs to change. I don't want to feel scared and uncomfortable of law enforcement in my own neighborhood. So I want to introduce my sister, Shurnette, and my co-host actually for the show. Shurnette's going to be joining us. Shurnette, are you there?
I am.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great.
You look good.
Thank you.
When you and I were having a conversation a couple of weeks ago, you know, since the whole, the killing of George Floyd, you know, and lots of conversations around racism, and you started to share with me some things that happened to you in high school. And I knew about some of them, but some of them I hadn't heard before. And I found it very shocking. And so that was the reason actually why I wanted you to be on the show, the first episode, to really talk about your experience. So let's dive into that. Let's dive into when we first got here. So we first arrived in Canada in 1974. And I'm not sure what month it was, but I know there was snow. And I remember my first experience with snow, thinking, what is this weird stuff that I'm standing in?
Well, I was 3, so I have a point of reference.
Do you remember anything your little 3-year-old mind can draw on?
Yes. Mommy, when can I eat? I think I just trusted that between you, Mommy, and Daddy, I would be taken care of. That's all I thought about.
Okay.
So my memories didn't really start until I would say I was maybe, like my concrete memories, until I was maybe 4 or 5. And I don't have a point of reference of Jamaica. So the only reference of Jamaica that I have is Mommy and Daddy raising us in a household that represented the culture of Jamaica. So soup on Saturday, rice and peas on
Yes.
Sunday, right? But that was a very strong influence. And so from that time, I started to see the differences between the white kids that I went to school with and the parents I was growing up with. I grew up as the only Black girl in every class through each grade. And there was one other Black girl in the other grade. And it was at that school that I started.
Black girls when you started out?
When I started out, in my grade.
In your grade, okay.
Yeah, and I started in grade 5. It happened it started in grade school. With the teachers, with the students. But the biggest experience that was a game changer for me in my life was when it was wintertime. We were at recess and the bell rang, and we were all lining up, and the teachers were getting ready to take us back inside the school. And I was standing quietly, just standing there waiting to be let back in. And when I got in, we had a French class next. And this was when all the teachers came to your class and you didn't go to their class. So our homeroom teacher came to the door and he called me out of the class. So I stood in the hall with him and he said, Robert is downstairs right now with an ice pack on his head. And I thought, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that about Robert. And so then he says to me, well, what do you have to say for yourself? And I was like, now I'm confused because I'm like, what are you talking about? This is him speaking. I saw you hit Robert Duncan over the head at recess when we were all lining up with an ice pack, with a pack of ice, or, because it was wintertime. And I was like, no, I didn't do that. Yes, you did. We're calling your parents into the school. And he was starting to tell me all these things that were going to happen. So then I went back into class and now I'm in tears. And so interestingly enough, the French teacher she saw me crying, but she didn't care to engage. She just ignored me. And then when the bell rang and she left, before our homeroom teacher came in, all the kids were like, what's wrong? So I told them what happened. And Karen Lecce was this girl with bright red hair. And she said, I hit Robert. And other kids were like, no, it was Karen. We're going to tell Mr. McGuigan it was Karen. So when he came into class, they all ran up. They said, Mr. McGuigan, you have it wrong. It was not Shurnette, it was Karen. Karen said, I did it. And he refused. He refused
to believe the person that said, I did it, and he refused to believe the kids that said, this person did it.
Yeah, he refused to switch his story. And so he still went to the principal. He still called mommy and daddy to come to the school, which was huge, right?
Yes. Parents having to come to the school is big.
So, and it was my first experience of being wrongly accused of something, and it never left me.
And that's the point that I also want to draw about, right? How those racist experiences, biases experiences, shape us, ingrain us, they're in us, and they actually, they cause barriers for us as we continue on and try to live our lives, right?
Completely.
Okay, so now I want to just move along a little bit to your group of friends. Tell me about your core group of friends and what was that experience like?
So recently at work, actually, they're doing a series of discussions on racism. You know that there's this famous book out now called White Fragility. In it, she speaks about, the mindset that if you are nice, you're not racist. And in this discussion that I was having with some people, that element of racism came up, that if you're nice, you're not racist. And I would say that that is what I experienced with you know, the people who were my core group of friends. They were very nice. I had wonderful experiences with them socially, but embedded in all of, you know, the whole tapestry of our friendship was racism, was discrimination, was just rejection of wanting to I like embrace my true identity as a Black woman, as a Jamaican person. Um, and so because they were always so nice, even when I tried to say, you guys you're not seeing me for me, it was met with, why are you always so vigilant, Shurnette? You know, so if I wasn't
a Black woman, right?
I was told by one of them, Shurnette, it's just that you wear your color on your sleeve.
You wear your color on your sleeve. Well, yes, you wear your color on your sleeve because your color is your skin.
My color is my sleeve. And I remember one time when I had them over for dinner at the apartment. For dessert, I fed, because I was trying to feed them this Caribbean meal.
You got to give them a taste of your own culture.
Yeah, it was met with a lot of poking and prodding and questions. But the most hurtful thing was when I fed them bun and cheese. Bun and cheese, is that's our staple.
That's Caribbean, yeah, bun and cheese. Yeah.
Bun and cheese. So I fed them bun and cheese, and it was met with, what's this? Well, why are these pieces of fruit? What's this piece of fruit in it? And, ooh, what's that? And they ended up either insulting me with those questions, and then some of them threw it over the balcony.
Threw it over the balcony?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, they went outside onto the balcony and tossed it over the balcony, without, they didn't say, oh, Shurnette, look, we're gonna toss your food over the balcony. But they tossed it over the balcony and told me afterward. Consistent attacks like that could kill a person.
Yeah.
Psychologically, emotionally, even physically. Or it can make you stronger, more resilient, or it can make you sick. I think that the way that impacted me was I grew in resilience. I think it did add to my stress, and because I wasn't allowed to have a voice to say, that really sucks the way you're treating me. I learned to suppress my feelings.
Okay.
And I'm sure if you talk to them all today, they'd be like, no, Shurnette, you got to say anything that you wanted because you were so vocal. But in what I said, it was so minor by comparison to what I should have been allowed to say, because the offenses were so awful that I still learned to swallow my pain.
It's like, pardon the French, but it's like eating poop politely.
Yeah, okay.
I'm being nice. Like if you had to, let's think of Maddie. How would you, and what advice would you give her? We love Maddie. She's just entering now high school, right? What advice would you give her as a young Black girl living in America, right? If she was to encounter issues around racism in her new school?
Okay, so I actually have. This has actually happened. So when Maddie was 3 or 4 years old, she too started to understand the differences between Black and white. So I had told you a story about how when I was around the same age, I went up to the front of Daddy's bedroom and I held out my arm and I said, "Look, Daddy, I'm white," because I was trying to draw on the lightest side of my skin, right? Something that I'll never forget and that hurts me to this day. I can't even imagine how he might have felt as my father. And then one day I was babysitting Maddie, and she was in the shopping cart with me. She was around the same age, and she looks at me, and that she is much more fair skinned. She looks at me and she says, "I'm white." And it was like history was repeating itself. And I was growing up in a more, I thought, in a whiter community. And so maybe that was the reason. And Maddie was growing up in Brooklyn, New York, where there's a little more diversity, and she still suffered the same ills. And so I did this exercise with her where I showed her a picture of Lupita Nyong'o, the actress. Mm-hmm. And I asked her, what do you think of her in terms of beauty? She's pretty, okay. Then I showed her a picture of Beyonce. And then she was like, "Oh, she's beautiful." Yeah, why? Because of her long hair, her skin is really beautiful. And then I showed her a picture of Christy Brinkley. And she's like, "Oh my goodness, she is the most beautiful."
Wow.
Because she had the blonde hair and she had the white skin and the blue eyes, right? Mm-hmm. And then I started to talk to her about beauty and where beauty originates from, and that we need to love our skin, mm-hmm. and we need to love our hair and embrace ourselves.
Absolutely.
And so now, and I talked to her mom too, because, we learn it from the media, we can learn it from the home, but if our parents are not like this on us every day to tell us how beautiful we are, how smart we are, how fantastic we are, we might not stand a chance, because the outer world is telling us so much every day how not enough we are, how ugly we are, how stupid we are, that we need to we need to
love up on each other. Black people need to love up on each other, on our Black girls. Tell them how beautiful they are.
So now Maddie wears her hair completely natural.
I saw that.
Out.
Yes.
And she said to me one day, I really think Lupita Nyong'o is beautiful.
I want to thank Shurnette again for being on our show and sharing her experience with us. Our experiences reflect that of many Black women who immigrate, start school, and go beyond. Childhood experiences shape us for our entire lifetimes. Everyone's got a unique story to tell, but there are commonalities to point to because our context is shared. In our next show, we'll continue the conversation with other Black women who will share their experiences with moving on up. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep living in your color.